Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization. Again, today's topic is going to be about how long your workouts should be, or really can be, at the very top end. What's too long to work out? And we'll of course answer the question of, maybe what's too short to work out as well. So we're going to come at this from multiple perspectives. We're going to talk about workouts for strength. We're going to talk about workouts for hypertrophy. We're going to talk about workouts for fat loss cardio. Like if you step on the treadmill to try to lose some fat through a session, what's the longest you should be on that thing? Sports cardio, like you're training for a triathlon and you have like a 10-mile run, what's too long? And sport practice. Let's say you're doing wrestling or jujitsu or gymnastics or whatever, basketball, football, what's the longest practice should be? And what's the point at which it's like probably a good idea to just go home, rest, and maybe do another session instead of just keeping going in one session at a time. So first, we can look at the most theoretical, very top-end answers of what's for sure too long to do at any one time in one session. So for strength, you can hypothetically, in some circumstances, continue to strength train in a single session until your performance falls below the strength intensity threshold. Like once the weights are too light, you're actually not training for strength anymore. You're probably training for more like hypertrophy or just getting tired. The weights just aren't challenging anymore. It's time to stop. There are other reasons we're going to stop sooner than that. We'll get to that in just a sec, but just to outline the basics here. For hypertrophy, we train or can train until the latest the target muscles are no longer the limiting factors in our working sets. Right? Because if you are so tired centrally, you just can't give enough oomph to your muscles, you're probably done. And the target muscles are no longer what you're training. You're just training systemic resilience at that point, just being tough or something like that. Fat loss cardio has a bit more of a nuanced cutoff. It's when the stimulus to fatigue ratio of calorie burning becomes unacceptably low. We'll get into what that means in just a second. But basically when the cardio tires you out so much that it'd be better to just come in fresher and do another session later. We'll of course put real world values to these things. So we'll actually give you times. We're not just going to talk pure theory. For sport cardio, triathlon training or something like that, it can be up until the performance falls below what is your target threshold for that endurance training at the time. So if you're saying, I'm going to keep a 7 minute per mile pace, and all of a sudden you've trained so long that you can't do that anymore, you're not training to your goals anymore, you're not training hard enough to get the sport adaptations you want, so it's time to cut it off. And lastly, for sport practice, up until your technique is no longer crisp. Because if you practice bad technique fatigued, you learn bad technique, you essentially reinforce bad technique, and then you become worse at technique, which is really, really bad. Sport practice is largely about technique anyway. We'll talk about exactly when that point seems to happen and how to detect it. So without further ado, let's move into strength. Okay, fundamentally, you can train for strength in one session until performance falls below strength intensity threshold. What does that mean? Well, for intermediates and advanced folks, because beginners gain strength lifting like 30% of their 1 rep max, this usually means anything below 75% 1RM confers much less strength gain per set than anything above 75% 1RM. So if you're training 80% 1RM, 75%, 75% 1RM, and you're doing quality sets, like you may very well be gaining strength. If you're training like 70% 1RM, 65%, 60% 1RM, you may be conferring other benefits such as hypertrophy or something, work capacity or endurance, but you're probably not gaining a whole lot of strength. And if you're pretty advanced, any at all. And if you're actually very advanced, you could be regressing in strength, doing too much volume of that really, really light stuff. Now, the way we apply this rule is usually, you could hypothesize like, okay, so if I can still do a single at 75% 1RM, then I can still keep going. I guess technically by that metric you can, but we don't train with singles for basic strength. We train with normal sets, in your target rep range. So target rep range for strength is usually the 3 to 6 range, but we can also use, for example, the 5 to 8 range to build like some strength and hypertrophy at the same time. So whatever your rep range is, if you can no longer do working sets in your target rep range, at 75% 1RM or heavier, you're no longer training for strength. So for example, if your squat 1RM is 400 pounds, okay, 75% of that is 300 pounds. And if you can't do sets of like 3 to 6 or sets of 5 to 8 with 300 pounds, then you're for sure done. Okay, so then you're for sure just not training for strength, right? However, more than likely our workouts are going to be cut much shorter than that. This is the very, very theoretical top end. A lot of people will reach other caps at which we say it's time to leave before that. For example, The most common next cap is you're doing so much volume in this session, even though technically speaking it's above the strength threshold, that you're creating an excessive amount of fatigue that's going to interfere with your next session. Because remember, if you do squats on Monday and front squats on Thursday for strength, yeah, you can do a crap ton of squats on Monday, but what if you do so many that your front squats on Thursday suffer? You're still sore, you're still beat up, your nervous system's still messed up, you just have a dog shit performance. You want two high quality workouts. You don't want one over the top workout and one workout that sucks. So a big concern there is to do enough volume to stimulate gains, but not so much that your next workout sucks. You want to stop it at some point to make sure you recover in time to have your next workout be good. So TLDR, depending on the setup you're using, the realistic top end for the number of sets you're going to do per workout, okay, not per muscle group, it's much smaller per muscle group, but per total strength workout is usually, because remember, these sets are hardcore, they're tough, they're technically demanding, they're heavy. You're not going to be able to do an infinity of them like you do for hypertrophy, hypothetically, right? It's usually between 10 and 20 total work sets is the top end. That doesn't mean all of your workouts should have 10 to 20 work sets. A lot of them will have fewer than 10. But if you're anything above 20 work sets in a strength workout, I start to suspect you're doing some weird stuff towards the end. It has nothing to do with strength. It's needlessly fatiguing you. It's certainly not strength training. Now, if you have a strength workout and after it you have a hypertrophy workout in the same session, yeah, you can do some more work. There's some interference effects with that. We have other advanced videos covering that. That's fundamentally okay. But if our strength work sets of 3 to 8 reps, roughly, or 2 to 8 reps, you don't want to do any more than 10 to 20 total work sets split amongst various parts of your body. That means even if you squat, bench, and deadlift in the same workout, any more than 20 total working sets of all those movements and the muscles that use them is way too much for strength work that usually, under most normal circumstances, should take no longer than 2 hours, which means maybe you'll get better and be having excellent results training more than 2 hours at a time for strength. But you should be skeptical if you're training for more than 2 hours at a time. And if I see you training for more than 2 hours at a time and you tell me that you're training for strength, I'm going to be skeptical that you're not organizing your training efficiently and that you're taking too much time or doing too much volume. So the 2 hour cap is a real world, which means what? Someone says like, hey, my powerlifting workouts, when should I have a shake during them? And I'll be like, well, you don't have to have a shake. You could if it's longer than an hour. How long's your workout? And you're like, well, it's 3.5 hours. I'm like, I'll be like, what the hell are you doing for 3.5 hours? Because towards the end of that, you're not training strength. I don't care what you say. Or you are training strength that entire time, but you spend like 5 minutes talking to the girl on the cardio machine, 6 minutes like looking at your knee wraps or something like that. Then you're just wasting time. So if you're working efficiently and you're taking just enough rest as you need, anything more than 2 hours is probably overkill. Right? Hypertrophy is actually super simple. So let's move on to hypertrophy. Hypertrophy can be trained until the target muscles are no longer the limiting factors in work sets. Okay, and you can stop way earlier for a bunch of other reasons, specifically recovery for not doing too much in the session and being able to be ready to do good high quality work in the next session and recover. But top end is your muscles are no longer the limiting factors, which means that if you have a pretty well practiced mind muscle connection, you can actually feel when this happens, right? Like you're doing bench press, and your pecs and pecs are getting more and more pumped and you're feeling it. And then at some point you're going to do a set of bench and you're going to go close to failure and you're going to rack and someone's like, oh man, did like your muscles start to cramp and you couldn't do it anymore? Like, honestly, man, I'm just so tired that I can't even get my muscles to fire super hard. Like I'm just done. I'm spent. I feel centrally limited, right? When you feel like your soul has been taken from your body, and all of you have trained hard on hypertrophy training, know exactly what I'm talking about. Like someone's like, at the end of a really long leg workout, someone's like, it's your quads, right? They're done. You could be like, I don't know. Yes, also, but I can't train anything after that. I can't train my quads after that. I can't train my hamstrings. I'm done from a central systemic perspective. If that's the case, your muscle can't be taken close to local failure, which means the quality of every set is going to suck, which means you should be gone and potentially just come back in another session. The skeptical limit on this is 2 hours. If you tell me you're in a hypertrophy session and longer than 2 hours, I'm starting to really, really question how high quality the later sets are. The later sets are probably junk volume, which is to say they're probably limited much more by your central systemic ability to squeeze something out versus your muscles actually getting close to failure and getting their best hypertrophic benefit. Fat loss cardio. Okay, this is cardio you do not to get better at sport, not to run the mile faster, but just to burn fat. Okay, tons of people do it all the time. When you stop your cardio session can be up until the stimulus to fatigue ratio of calorie burning becomes unacceptably low, okay? Stimulus to fatigue ratio for calorie burning is really simple. You stimulate calorie burning just based on your pace and the modality. So you're on the elliptical at 130 beats per minute, it just burns a certain number of calories per minute. So that's your stimulus. Easy. It's the easiest stimulus ever to calculate. It's also completely objective. Okay, you're not like, oh, am I feeling my bicep? Like, am I doing 140 beats per minute? Yes. Do I still weigh 190 pounds? Yes. I'm burning a certain number of calories, the machine tells me, right? However, the stimulus side is easy to calculate, but the bottom, the denominator fatigue side is also really straightforward, but is a little bit more perceptive. Fatigue is like, you could be on the elliptical. Like when you start on the elliptical, you usually feel like, oh, this sucks. But after 5 or 6 minutes, you're like, oh man, like I'm starting to get my groove. You got your jams in, you're staring at people in the gym, trying to work on your lean face. And all of a sudden 40 minutes pass and you're grooving. Towards the end, you're going to start to feel like you're really, really dragging. Now, look, if you still keep up the same pace, you still burn the same number of calories, right? Your stimulus side is really still good, right? But your fatigue side starts to get higher and higher and higher, which means your stimulus to fatigue ratio starts to suck. You're burning these calories and you're paying an incrementally higher and higher fatigue cost every minute that you're on the machine. Maybe it's best after a while for you to get off the machine, go home, rehydrate, etc., take a rest, have a meal, and then maybe come back the next day and do cardio. So people say like, should I do cardio Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Maybe, but maybe if it's getting too long each session and you're really dragging towards the end, maybe doing cardio 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday at half the time is best. How is it best? It's better stimulus to fatigue ratio. So over the course of the week, you burn the same number of calories, but you pay a smaller fatigue cost. And in the context of a fat loss diet, the less fatigue you can have, the better, especially with muscle retention and keeping up your lifting performance. So technically, you can just keep going with cardio until you fall, but fatigue exponentially gets higher. Okay. So generally speaking, there's going to be in every cardio session, you're going to feel like crap in the beginning, which is totally fine. You're not like, oh, my SFR sucks, let me get off of here. You're going to feel pretty good towards the middle once you get your groove going. And then towards the end, you're going to have a systemically based drag. Like usually the reason people stop with cardio, especially if they're in decent shape, is a systemic rate limiting step. Your brain literally tells you like, we're done here, man. And it's not because your muscles are cramping or anything like that, right? So it's okay to push through that tail end towards the bit. You don't want to just stop when you feel good. It's okay to feel that drag a little bit. And sometimes you got a goal and you got to hit it. You only have so many cardio sessions per week, but you don't want to be deep into that suck. Okay. You don't want to be like 30 minutes into the worst time of your life and you're just incrementally adding tons and tons of fatigue. If you say, yeah, willpower, bro, take that willpower, put it in a little duffel bag and bring it back to the gym later that day or another day, get the same amount of cardio over the course of the week, just spread into more sessions. That's how all good athletes train, is multiple sessions a week. So what's the skeptical cutoff for you guys at home, just on raw numbers? Anything over about an hour per session at roughly 120 to 140 beats per minute, which is a really good fat loss cardio heart rate anyway. Anything over about an hour, man, you just do another session. People post on Instagram like 2 hours of cardio, like, good God, right? And it's fine, right? It's fine. But that second hour pays a nasty fatigue cost. 1 hour of cardio, not super fatiguing, burns tons of fat, and you just do more of those sessions, 6 sessions a week, you're well on your way. And to be completely honest with you guys, unless you're tracking steps and you're getting your activity throughout the day, any more than like 1 hour of cardio 6 days a week, if you do any more cardio than that for fat loss purposes, bodybuilding purposes, you probably should just lower more of your calories instead. Because then at that point, you're becoming an endurance athlete and less of a bodybuilder, right? So give that some thought. All right. Second to last, I think, is sport cardio. Okay, this is cardiovascular exercise, performance exercise designed to enhance your abilities at your sport, which often is a cardiovascular sport, right? So it's cardio training. It's either done for endurance sport or a sport like maybe like rugby or something in which endurance is a factor. How do we know when to stop? We can keep going until the performance of the cardio falls below the threshold of intensity that we're targeting for our endurance training, right? The good news is your program and or hopefully your coach should have those numbers distinctly defined for you as what is the intensity we want. Almost every, if not every, cardio program for triathlon, marathon, 5,000, 10,000, so on and so forth, any kind of swimming and any kind of sport practice, almost all that cardio is going to come with a pace, right? They give you a pace. Once you cannot maintain that pace, and until and unless you get the prescribed distance, you're no longer training for sport. Okay. If someone says, your coach says, okay, we need a 7-minute mile pace for as many miles as you can go. They never say that, but they say, let's say 8 miles. And they say, maybe you'll make it 8 miles, maybe not. If you fall below that pace, you are no longer training to that pace. You are not training in the exact way your coach wants for you to get really, really good at that sport. Because nobody gives a flying fuck, excuse my language, If you run a marathon and succeed, like congratulations, you're a participant. That's really great. Marathons are tough. If you're an athlete in the sport of marathon, what matters is, can you cross the finish line at a certain time with a certain pace? And if you're not training to that, it doesn't matter. It's like someone who wants to squat 800 pounds, squatting 200 pounds just for more reps. He's like, hey, I'm still summing up the total, right, guys? I'm still crossing the finish line. What? You're never going to squat 800 pounds if you just do 200 pounds. Just the same way, endurance training, cardio training is not about finishing and doing the work. It's about doing the work at the pace. If you can no longer do the pace, folks, it's time to cut off the session. And usually the coaches will cut off the session way more in advance than that, right? But that's to minimize fatigue, to keep performance high. But if you don't know and you're not super sure, anytime the pace falls below what you need, you're done, right? You're super done. There's no skeptical cutoff here because some of the training can be of a very low pace. It can be for hours. People go on the cycle, they go on the bike, they swim, they run for hours and hours and hours on end, and that's totally fine as long as you're hitting your pace. But if you're not hitting your pace, you're done. So if you're having a really, really bad day, off day, and you tell your coach, like, coach, I can't keep up a 6-minute mile pace, usually they'll be like, all right, finish up, do a little cool down, go home, sleep a ton, eat a ton, relax, and we're going to ramp your intensity back up later this week as you recover. That's it. All right. Lastly, sport practice. This means actually practicing your sport, playing basketball, playing football, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, all this other stuff. How long do you maintain sport practice? And by the way, this actually goes for weightlifting when you're doing snatches and clean and jerks, okay? Because that's technically sport practice. So sport practice should almost certainly stop when technique is no longer crisp, okay? Now, here's the thing. When you do sport practice, at some point, you get so tired that you're making obvious and annoying mistakes, like stuff you shouldn't be doing when you're like, dude, I feel like I have butterfingers. What the hell is going on? You're in a crappy position all the time. Here's the thing. It's okay because we all have moments like that every now and again, especially when we're learning a new technique. No big deal. So give yourself another round or another set or another little time slot to see if it's a fluke. Because sometimes you raise your bar again and you're good to go and you're just grooving and moving and doing great technique. No big deal. It wasn't fatigue. But if you give yourself another round of things and you're still doing some of the following, it might be a good idea to shut the session down and just come back in another time. For example, making such mistakes still. Making more such mistakes. Okay, so you weren't grabbing the person's thigh and wrestling like you were supposed to be. You're forgetting, okay, when I shut down, I grab the thigh. And not only were you not grabbing the thigh, now you're just grabbing the knee and your coach is like, dude, what, you messed up the last 3 shots. What are you doing? You're making more mistakes than before. Not a good sign. You feel subjectively tired in addition to that. Because look, if you feel fresh and you're grooving with your suck at technique, sometimes it's a rusty day. No big deal. You don't have to quit. But if you're missing the positions you're supposed to be or everything feels off groove and you're also like, oh, I'm super exhausted physically, gee whiz, the fatigue is probably contributing to that decline in technical ability. If you have all those things, it's probably best to cut yourself off, right? Technique learning is very, very hampered by fatigue because then you're learning the techniques wrong. So the rationale to keep going in sport is the worst of all of these applications. If you just keep going in strength and the intensity is barely there, you might get some extra gains. Hypertrophy, maybe some extra gains. Endurance, your endurance might even get better. If you continue to practice with incrementally crappier and crappier technique, you can get worse at your sport and you almost certainly won't get better. The trick to getting really good at sports is multiple sessions of relatively short duration, higher frequency. That's how you get to an advanced level, okay? You look at the guys that go to Jiu-Jitsu Worlds, they don't train for 2 hours at a time twice a week. Nobody does that. They train 12 times a week for 30 or 20 minutes here and there doing high-level rolls. That's how they train. That's how you get to be the best. So, TLDR, the goal of all training is to have high-quality workouts that confer the best results with the lowest price of fatigue, right? By whatever measure you're using, if the quality of the workout has degraded substantially and you know it, it's probably best to stop the workout. In the gym, that usually means anything about over 2 hours should definitely raise some eyebrows, okay? If you really need to train for that much longer, you should probably just come in and do more sessions. So people ask like, hey, and this is an answer to that question directly. When should I switch from a 4x a week split to a 5x a week split? One of the answers, there are other answers, could be, well, can you get all your training done in like an hour and a half? And like, nah, it's pushing 2 hours. Probably better to do 5 sessions, right? In hypertrophy training for optimality, when any of your sessions exceed much over an hour, or like for legs or something, an hour and a half, after you're done warming up into the hard stuff, splitting it's probably a good idea, right? So people say like, why does this guy train quads by themselves and not quads and hams? Because if you did quads and hams together, it would be 2.5 hours, because that's how long it takes to warm up for a 675 pound stiff legged deadlift or something, right? So super jacked guys sometimes split their muscle groups up a lot because they can only do due diligence. That's tough to say, for 1 or 2 muscle groups at a time, and then they just run out of time. They run out of systemic abilities, and then systemically they're more limited than they are locally, right? Now, once you accomplish your training goal for the day, you can leave. And all we addressed was the top end here. We didn't address the bottom end. It's because the bottom end doesn't exist. There is no such thing as too short of a workout. If you have time to warm up and you get whatever you have a goal for the day, you can leave. If that takes you 35 minutes, sweet, see ya. Now, you may be planning your workouts in a way that's arbitrarily too small, but as long as it's not too much, you can fill up all that workout time up to an hour, hour and a half, or whatever. If it's not too much on any of these sort of check marks, then you're going to condense your workout. So you can say like, should I be doing 6 hypertrophy workouts a week? I can ask you a question. Can you get all your high quality work done in 4 sessions? You'd be like, yes. Be like, then 6 sessions a week would just be you coming to the gym more often. If you want to do that, sweet. It'll confer slight advantage maybe, but probably not worth it for you sitting in traffic and yelling at people out of your car an extra 2 days of the week when you can get the work done in 4. But if you can't, it's time to do more sessions, right? The goal is never to just do more for its own sake. People say dumb ass shit like always be the first to enter the gym and the last to leave. What the fuck? What are you doing in there? Be the person that enters the gym on a fucking mission, gets amazing training, and when that training degrades, leaves, plots his revenge, and comes back later that day or the next day. Be a person who frequents the gym often for high quality workouts and is aware of their recovery and is doing the right shit. Then you become a dangerous motherfucker, not just by showing up to the gym early and twiddling your thumbs and working out way too hard and then getting worse and then waiting until that last guy stops drilling and leaves the gym. There's no competition. Nobody's watching the gym, guys. I mean, your gym owner could have like secret hidden camera somewhere. I wouldn't know anything about that personally from many lawsuits many moons ago, but nobody gives a shit how long you're at the gym. Are you there to do quality? And when the quality degrades, do you leave and do you go recover? And do you come back when it's time to train again? That's the only thing that matters. And if you need more sessions, add more sessions. Don't just add duration. Folks, hopefully you find that sort of interesting. If you have any questions about how to install a secret camera in your gym, go ahead and shoot them my way. I would have some expertise on that. Folks, before I incriminate myself further, see you next time.